Those are fucking awesome. Look at that.
Chance to know either of my grandfathers, as they both had passed before I was born. I did, however, have the honor and privilege of spending a great deal of my childhood with my Italian grandmother. Now, we did not talk very much, but I observed and learned while she showed me. When the chores were done, we'd watch shows on her 14-inch black and white television. It was in her living room that I saw President John F. Kennedy give his inaugural speech, and will always remember those words. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. We watched as Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And we watched silently together as President John F. Kennedy's funeral procession proceeded to Arlington's National Cemetery. I remember all too well my grandmother beginning to cry, and I also started to cry, even though I was too young to really understand what was going on. But I knew she was terribly sad. Years later, while studying Italian in college, I innocently asked my grandmother why she never spoke Italian to her children, my aunts, my uncle, and my mother. Well, she reeled around from that kitchen sink and sternly told me in her broken English, "They are not Italian. They are American. They speak English."
Amen. Yep.
Trust me, for once in my life, I was speechless, but I knew better than to question her further. 2 years later, upon graduating college, I treated myself to a bus tour vacation. It was here at Mount Rushmore, sitting in the old amphitheater, staring up at our 4 great forefathers, Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln. I finally understood what my grandmother meant about being an American. Forged purely by nature, perfected by man, Mount Rushmore is internationally seen as the shrine of democracy. Little did I know that my grandmother, with only a 6th grade education, would have such profound knowledge of what it means to be an American. Yes, she was Italian by birth and heritage, but in her heart and in her mind, she was American by choice. And I know that if she were alive today, I am sure she would agree that to heal America, all you need to do is love America.
Yes. Yes.
My grandmother did, and so do I.
The United States of America. It's hard to imagine, but not long ago, this great land of ours was pure wilderness. A place where millions of bison roamed freely throughout the plains. And those who lived off the land revered it as sacred ground. Yet this country would face a dramatic change, quickly becoming the most advanced nation in the world, in technology, in peace, and in power. From its inception, the United States has shaped itself under the guidance of strong leaders, leaders who have taken risks, stood up to adversity, and never let go of their vision for a better country. Mount Rushmore reminds us of them, and the countless Americans who have made great sacrifices to ensure the lasting legacy of our country. Freedom. We strived for it. We died for it. We lived for it. The year was 1923. The place, the Black Hills of South Dakota. State historian Doane Robinson proposed that these granite outcroppings could be the site of an enormous monument dedicated to the heroes of the West, such as Lewis and Clark and Chief Red Cloud. But commissioned sculptor Gutzon Borglum had a different concept in mind. Borglum was a passionately patriotic man and believed that a more fitting tribute should honor the American experience. A memorial that would represent our ideals, our dreams, and our accomplishments as a country. A memorial that would convey a spirit of patriotism. Borglum chose his canvas carefully, the giant granite rock face of Mount Rushmore. And in 1927, work on the mountain began. Borglum assembled a team of local miners, ranchers, and lumbermen to help with construction. The sculptor built a model of the president's to serve as a guide. Every inch of the model represented 1 foot on the mountain. Year after year, Borglum and his crew hung tirelessly up the side of the mountain, drilling and blasting their way to reach granite solid enough for carving. It took 14 years and nearly $1 million to complete the 4 60-foot faces. And even though the sculptor did not live to see the very final touches put into place, he was able to carry out his vision. 4 great Americans immortalized in stone. symbolizing the democratic society in which we live, the struggle for our independence, the fight for our freedom, and the sacrifices we have made since our country began more than 200 years ago. It was a time of rebellion and of war. It began as an uprising against British rule and turned into a full-fledged crusade for personal freedom and national independence. The American Revolution. From 1775 to 1783, up to 250,000 patriots engaged in battle. Even during the toughest times, when the Continental Army seemed undisciplined and ill-equipped, one man's courage and determination ultimately led the troops to victory over the British. The future father of our country, George Washington. Born and raised in colonial Virginia, George Washington grew up to be a firm believer in American independence. Even though his heart yearned for quiet family life at his Mount Vernon home, his deep commitment to the Republic made him answer the call of his country time and time again. As general, Washington became an instant hero throughout the colonies. The public was so enamored with him that many people wished that he become king. But Washington scoffed at such an idea.
The army must serve the country, but not rule it. Express your utmost horror and detestation of the man who wishes to overturn the liberties of our country. George Washington, 1783.
It was this kind of insight and integrity that made him the perfect person to oversee the creation of a new federal government. With no blueprint to follow, Washington kept the colonies united and on course during the infant years of this nation. And after ratification of the Constitution, when he was unanimously elected first President of the United States, Washington was keenly aware that he was laying down the framework for future presidents to follow. Washington's legacy is that of a man who was first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. In his inaugural address, he spoke of the task that lay before this new nation.
The preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government, all justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finally stable, when the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. George Washington, 1789.
George Washington welded this union, but it would take another great visionary to expand it. Thomas Jefferson, third President of the United States.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson, 1776.
Thomas Jefferson was the voice of the American people, inspiring patriots with his carefully crafted words written in the Declaration of Independence, the document that gave birth to our nation. It was also Jefferson who fought for religious freedom and the democratic notion that people should have a say in government, two very American principles we cherish today. Thomas Jefferson always thought of himself more as a scientist or scholar than as a politician. And it was this quest for knowledge that played a role in the greatest achievement of his presidency. 203. Jefferson acquired the French lands west of the Mississippi in the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the country. In an effort to find out what America now owned, Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on their famous expedition out west. It was an exciting time of discovery for new Americans. However, what was good for a growing nation was not necessarily good for its original inhabitants. During this time of expansion, many Native Americans were uprooted from their homes and hunting grounds and pushed farther west. But during an address to a group of Cherokee chiefs, Jefferson